Hey, family. Happy New Year. I guess I should say that right off from the top of this broadcast. We are sharing. It is January the 5th, the first Monday of the year 2026. Listen, I was telling folk in services on yesterday. I remember, this dates me just a little bit, and I'm okay. I was a fan of the Flintstones and the Jeffersons. I'm sorry, not the Jeffersons, the Jetsons. And I thought by the year 2000, we'd be flying around in flying cars. That's what I thought. I thought we'd be going to the moon and to Mars and to Venus all at the same time. I'd meet George Jetson. I just thought that's how we were going to do. And to my amazement, I went and watched an episode. There are plenty of those things that we can do, like video chats. We got machines now that do lots of things. We're talking about how do we deal with AI. I'm getting ahead of myself. But here we are in 2026. And can I just say that I'm happy to be among you. I'm glad to be seen. I'm glad to be in the land of the living. And I'm glad God has chosen us for what I'm going to say, such a time as this. I am pleased and godly proud to have this opportunity and to have this platform and to talk to folk, as I often say, to talk to people I know, people I know pretty well, my friends, some are family to me, and I get to talk to them about the stuff I want to talk about. Isn't that funny how you can do that when it's your thing? Mm-hmm. Anyway, I am glad today to be in conversation with two of my brothers who are both comrades and co-collaborators in the work of providing justice and leadership in spiritual communities here in Connecticut. I've known both of them for, well, yeah, a couple of decades now, and certainly can say with no hesitation or reservation, they are some of my closest, and couldn't do what it is that I do without their leadership, their counsel, and their support. And I thought it would be appropriate that we begin our work in this space with these two prophets. I'm going to say it now. Now, one of them, their mama is gonna get with me pretty good if I say that prophet word too loud, too long. She was already mad with me because I got them arrested. And I know she ain't really quite forgave me for that. But I appreciate both of them. They have been leaders in this community in Connecticut and across the country, in their vineyards, in their reformations. That's Josh. That's some old Black people talk. That in the particular reformation they come out of in their traditions. Let me just bring them both to the platform. My brother, the Reverend Joshua Pawelek, and the Reverend Dr. Anthony L. Bennett. I'm gonna call him Anthony Leroy Bennett. I'm gonna call him Leroy for today. That'll give me another problem. I don't know if you know this, Anthony. My mother was gonna name me Leroy. So
well, that's good. My name ain't Leroy. It's Lindbergh.
Okay, we ain't gonna talk about that. Welcome, brothers. Why don't you greet the folk, Reverend Josh and Reverend Anthony?
Sure. Hey, Happy New Year, everyone. And for everyone who celebrates a blessed Epiphany, Three Kings Day, Theophany, Little Christmas Eve greeting. It's good to be with you guys. Reverend Bennett, always great to be with you. Bishop, always great to be with you.
Likewise with you, Brother Josh. Always good, and to be with our brother, Bishop John. It is a blessing. We bring New Year's greetings and blessings from my wife, my family, my son Ahmad, and granddaughter Nyla, and the Mount Airy community in Bridgeport. Just glad to be here with you, man.
Amen. I appreciate you both saying yes to being willing to be with us tonight. I thought it would be an appropriate way to begin both our conversation tonight by asking a series of questions. I used this in our time with our congregation here in Hartford. And I thought it would be also appropriate with a justice frame. So follow me just a little bit and then set it up, and then let's just ready, set, let's go. The Gospel of John, the first chapter of the Gospel of John, the second half of the first chapter. Of course, in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God. Y'all got that part. But then it goes on from there to talk about the call narratives of the early disciples. And so here's Jesus on the Sea of Galilee. All right, he's hanging out with the sons of thunder. Luke called them the sons of thunder, right? And he's hanging out with them, and the John's gospel doesn't say who asked this question, but there was a question asked of this early disciple of Jesus. He asked Jesus, "What are you looking for?" So I'm gonna just pause there for a moment. Of course, they engage in dialogue and conversation, and later there is the one gospel records, follow me and I'll make you to become fishers of men, blah 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 blah, right? But this question stuck with me in a particular way. What are you looking for? So I wanted to, in situating, here we are at the beginning of the new year, I wanted to frame this new year question about what are you looking for as you look on the horizons, this year. We're often at the end of the year in reflection mode, right? And, Advent is this kind of, we're in expectation, right? When we make the transition into the new year for African Americans, we're talking about Emancipation Day. We that tradition of watch night services has this expectation of the new the old into the new. That's what New Year's is, in some traditions, in some sense. But as we, in a faithful way or a spiritual way, what might be what we are seeing on the horizons in a spiritual way, right? What are you expecting? Not just what do you see, but what are you maybe claiming as your own? Now I want to partner that with my guy Howard Thurman, who he has a writing called "How Good It Is to Center Down," and that piece is about you're in the flow, the hustle and flow of life, and yet in order to get clarity, you got to center down a minute. And I like the term centering rather than settling, right? He used center, right? And I wanted to hear from both of you as you reflect just a bit on this question of what do you see in the horizon? As I ask this question, what comes to mind? And let's start there. Reverend Josh.
So I really appreciate the question, or the set of questions, and I've got a couple of responses. But when you mentioned John 1 earlier, I went and spent some time with it, and the thing that I always kind of take away from that second half of the first chapter is that these people who are becoming the disciples, they're pretty clear. They're looking for the Messiah, or they say, "Oh, we found the Messiah," or the Baptists found the Messiah, and they want to know where he's staying, and they want to, then they stay with him. And but I also always have the impression that Jesus is also looking for his disciples. He doesn't necessarily say that explicitly, but I think of this as a story about finding our people. Finding our people, but a very specific set of people. It's the people with whom we are going to do ministry. And I feel looking forward to this year. I think it's always true, but it feels so critical in these authoritarian times that we find our people and that we do ministry together. And what I love about our relationship and our history is that we have that history, that we've all taken a rest together, and we've all been in Connecticut for a long time, so we have a thick set of relationships here. And so I'm thinking back to the beginning of the pandemic. Bishop, you convened a lot of us for a regular phone call Saturday afternoons, and we're finding our people. And I feel like right now that's part of what has to, so for congregational ministers, for activists, for public servants, we got to be finding our people. And that's one of the things that this particular passion speaks to me about. I'll pause there.
Yeah, I think, Brother Josh, you're on it. I think in my local congregation, though we do prayer, there's a group of us that do prayer every day. The beginning of the year, we start out with what we call 31 days of prayer and challenge, sort of to center ourselves down from the reflection from the previous year and anticipation. And while many of the goals are more personal for people, but I think the slant that I seek to give it as a pastor is, how does your individual, so Ubuntu, how does your individual reality contribute to the larger reality? Brother Josh, I think you are absolutely right. We're looking for our people, as the disciples were looking for the Messiah, and got something different than what they were looking for, but something still meaningful. I think Jesus loved the disciples that he chose, but he got frustrated with them from time to time, right? So it was like finding your tribe doesn't mean finding, euphoria, but
You
it
still have
does.
work to do.
But you got work to do. And I think in the real work of justice, we are tempted to do it alone, but we can't do it alone. It's like Elijah thought he was the only one. Not realizing there's 7,000 partners. There's 7,000 prophets who have not bowed down. I think in this season, 2026, Bishop, the reason why I'm doing this in this moment, at this time, while in Atlanta, convening or sharing with other brothers and sisters like us who want to make our public witness about our personal faith and sort of bridge the two. And so what's on the horizon for me is more, not just public gatherings, but public people gathering. I'm finding my people, that I'm not out here by myself. Because in order to face this authoritarianism, this fascism, in order to face this evil, you can't do it alone. And you need the encouragement, the challenge, and the perspective that comes with being in community. And so I'm looking, for the most part, I'm looking to rebuild community. Because, pandemic is still the lingering effects of, what the pandemic did to individual families and all this stuff. We're sort of building on churches are still building, and faith communities and other social institutions. So for me, I'm looking forward this year of a regathering of the troops and the tribes. To encourage, I think there's another passage of scripture that says, wake up those that are sleeping, encourage the feeble-minded. So it's almost like we're doing these multiple things internally while we're still doing the external fight. And I think I'll leave it there. But that's what I'm looking for in 2026.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. There is. Thank you both for your introductory comments and remarks. I'm clear about a couple of things. One, stuff has changed in a way that it ain't gonna never be the same, right? I have said on a couple of occasions, I was when the east wing of the White House was under deconstruction. I saw an aerial view of the White House and the footprint of the White House. And I've been to the White House a couple of times, no shade. I just have been invited. And I've been to the East Wing, in fact. And to see it, and I ain't got no great love for the building. Let me be honest, that building don't hold a whole lot. But as I saw the building and the footprint, a whole third of the building was gone. And the Holy Ghost, as my grandmother would have said it, the Holy Ghost spoke to me. And Spirit said, this is what has happened to this government. It's gone. It has been deconstructed. All right. You're looking for something that ain't gonna be there no more. How do we, for example, get the Department of Education back? Right? The Department of Education's most robust role was as a compliance agency. It's gone, right? And people have been let go. Thousands of employees have had to transition to other pieces of work. I see this as, quite honestly, there are some people just are waiting for the midterms, right? Yeah. And I see it differently, and that we need to be thinking in terms of what do we do to move forward. It's so for me, I'm having where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Dr. King, come on in the room. Come on here to talk to us, because he was facing, as at the end of his life, we now know, he was facing the question, what happens now that civil rights for Black folk in particular must shift into his response a year prior to him saying that he was against the war in Vietnam. They said Dr. King, he was meddling in stuff. He need to stick with the civil rights stuff. Don't get over here in this other lane, for example. So I feel like very much community, right? If I'm looking for something, one, it can't just be about me and mine. Otherwise, because we're going to have to figure out. My mother used to say all the time, she used to say, may she rest in peace, she used to say, it's coming a time that we're going to have to figure out how we pool our resources like we used to. Now, this is a Mississippi gal. The both of you all know my mama from Mississippi. And so she remembered what it was like at the end of the 1930s, right? And what the community had to do as a little girl. She was a little girl coming out of the Depression era and coming into the 1940s. She was growing up in that period of time. And so our parents, that was their era, and that was their time. So I feel like this community thing is a bigger thing than we may even have understood. And I like what you said, Reverend Josh, in that looking for the people to do ministry with. I feel like we're gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to live with. We're gonna have to, ministry is maybe one component of what we may end up having to do as we are resourcing each other, because what we've depended on is for government to do the right thing when we push them into it. I don't know if the metaphor holds, and I believe as Spirit spoke to me, a third of it is gone, and we're not going to be able to depend on it in the same way. React, respond. What say ye?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so part of the anticipation of this year is the sobering realization of what you just shared. There is no longer the sense. I actually looked up yesterday. Many of the commentators talked about. You can look at it and say it's going to take at least one generation to restore some of the stuff that is being destroyed through the implementation of Project 2025. That whether Trump knows it or not, right? Knew what he was doing when he did it or not. That's 15, 20 years. So if you say 1 to 2 generations, that means 15 to 30 years, 20 to 30 years, which means that we three may not see it fully come back around. So for me, the sobriety of situating myself in this season of the journey, like, my mama grew up in Wino, Mississippi in the 30s, right? She's 33, born in 33. So my mother knows that there was both this hyper independence, but this sobering interdependence of knowing we ain't gonna make it just trying to be out there by ourselves. We need it. And I think in Connecticut and other parts of the country, once we find our people, we need to connect to other people who have similar kinds of understandings of justice and how interdependent our justice fights are.
So you guys may remember, Bishop, last winter and spring when we were going around doing these various gatherings at congregations around the country. Around the state. One of the things I kept saying, although I don't think I knew I didn't know what I meant at the time. I kept saying, I don't think we have the infrastructure, like in our faith-based activist organizing communities, we don't have the infrastructure to really respond to what's happening. And I think that's still true. But at the time, I didn't know really what it was leading me towards. Because I've been trained to try to think systemically and to try to ask, how do we change systems so that these things don't keep happening? But right now, there are so many casualties of exactly the things you're talking about, of this breaking of the American government. And I think very much on the front line are immigrants, right? I think very much on the front line is the queer community. I certainly think communities of color and poor communities. It's next year when this big, ugly bill finally starts really wreaking its havoc, and they cut Medicaid and they cut SNAP further. Oh my God. And my point is the need, there's always been need, but at least the phone calls I'm getting about people who need support are already dwarfing what I ever got anytime in my ministry. And the nice thing, or for me, the silver lining is they're not necessarily coming from the people who have the need, but they're coming from partners in the wider community. So groups like Heart for Deportation Defense, right? They're on the front line of trying to meet needs of these families that have had breadwinners detained and in many cases deported, right? Or these are people that don't want to go to work because they don't want to be detained at work. There's also, trans people moving from these red states where they have these really horrendous anti-trans laws, and they're coming to Connecticut, they're coming to Massachusetts, New York, Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, and some of them are coming in the dead of night, no job, no housing, kids, and so they need support. So I'm thinking, how do I reorganize what we do at the congregation that I serve so that we can just meet that need? And in my sermon the other day, I was talking about that as generosity. Like, I think we're called to this new species of generosity. And you said it, there's this kind of mutual aid that we haven't participated in because we've been trying to do systemic change, for what that's worth. We've been trying to do that, and we haven't been doing the real local support, but that's just hit me in the face.
Yeah. And yet, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Doc, because I'll share.
Well, one of the things I think we have to remember, it's always good to reference our history, right? What we call entitlements, what we call the service delivery, human service deliveries, those systems were started by religious communities.
Sure.
There was no such thing as a hospital until a group of churches, Hartford Hospital, got started from congregational folk, for example. Let me talk clear. The family for children and services, right? All of those kind of welfare, and I'm saying that in the broadest term. These systems we have today, those organizations, all of them got started out of faith communities who took on what was the need of the times to then become, the NAACP got started because there was advocacy, in particular around Black men and Black folk getting lynched down south and across this country. So we have a history of this, right? And yet you're also absolutely correct. We haven't done this kind of work because we got engaged in fighting the man or fighting these systems and believing in and that government for the people, by the people, we have these inalienable rights written by a man who was a enslaver. Anyway, I don't know how we got kind of, we didn't hold that intention, right? Anyway, I think we do have to think about how do we think differently. And let me just say that while we have also this track record, I think today is a different day all the way around. So even how we've done it in the past, we're going to have to do it differently. The Underground Railroad is going to have to be something different today. We thought we had it done when we created the. I pastored the congregation that had a no freeze zone. They were into the Cold War, and so
the nuclear freeze.
The nuclear freeze. That's right. And I served a congregation that was very deeply embedded and engaged in that thing. Now we have gone into another people's country, took the leader, brought him to them, the husband and wife and maybe others, to this country. Y'all, if you haven't seen the news lately, you need to check in for 5 minutes because they're gonna be talking about it, right? And we're acting like we've never done this before.
Nah.
What? I remember Panama and Noriega, for example. I mean, we got precedent here. That my point is that I think we're gonna have to do some new things, and it's not rocket science. It is going to take for us being willing to engage differently than we have in the past. And what we haven't done enough of is built the trust so that we can engage. Let me just talk about where I am. Hartford. I'm in the Hartford region. We don't have a whole lot of trust, Reverend Josh. You know that. I mean, at the end of the day, there are a few of us that gather, but I don't know if I believe it is not going to need to be a whole lot of us, but we are those of us who are going to be willing. We're going to have to engage and be committed to it. I'm talking. Well,
I mean, I think what you're saying is right. I think the challenge is multi-pronged. The unfortunate piece is never one thing. If we do that one thing, then okay, it's this Rubik's Cube. All right. I think in your comments section, I thought I saw Pastor Nancy Kingwood, who runs one of the largest and strongest direct service agencies, in the state, also included the dimension of the spirit of grief. And perhaps 30s and 40s, the understanding of grief was still there, but it was channeled differently. As I think about the Psalms from our scriptures, they acknowledged a level of grief, even while they were in the midst of fighting. It seems as though that either your tribe is acknowledgement of the grief, or your tribe is, we don't care about the grief, let's just get something done. Maybe, right. So maybe the different, in the name of getting stuff done, we've sort of stuffed the very real essence, the spirit that I think Dr. Thurman was trying to get to get alive in us, word made flesh, to own. So what I look for is what is a synergy and an interconnectedness between our own personal acknowledgement of how life has changed, how we're living through, and yes, when we do it now, it's going to have to be different. But, and I would say Bridgeport is basically sort of the same thing. I think I was talking to a preacher tonight at this conference. I do have a different view, though. Now, you said that, Josh, that the disciples were looking for a Messiah, and the Messiah was looking for, so they were looking for each other. I think also during Ferguson, and, while initially we wanted everybody on the front line, right? But you sort of realize some folk ain't gonna make it on the front line. They need to be in the corporate boardroom. So it's almost like not only knowing your tribe, knowing the function of your tribe in the larger Rubik's equation and being in touch. so that the brothers and sisters on the streets are in touch with the brothers and sisters in the corporate. And I think, because I think there is this patching. We don't have to do the same work, but we got to understand the interconnectedness of each of our approaches to this issue. And perhaps the mutual aid societies were the place where perhaps, yes, we didn't give the credit, but before we could go to these other agencies, it was the church trying to do all those things. In today's culture, we need to be in relationship with some of those other agencies. There's an internal struggle within most churches, like you said, trust. It's hard to get 5 to 7 churches together in any given moment beyond a worship service, which is a part of the struggle. But like you said, there's a way in which we've never had everybody come together. So how do we encourage the people who will come together and still continue to move in the direction that we feel we need to move in?
Well, I can tell you for sure, I'm not looking for everybody at this point.
You know what?
I'm not looking for everybody.
Yeah.
Because everybody gonna get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, because what you named is absolutely correct. This is multifaceted, it is multidimensional, and it's ever changing. Just as soon as you think you got this thing happening, they change the goalpost. And of course, some of us know how that works, right? Others they're just coming on board with that. I can tell you, Black folk know how just when you think you got it figured out, they're going to change that goalpost, they're going to change the rules, they're going to set it up differently, and it's going to come a different way at you. And so you got to be nimble and be able to make decisions pretty quickly. And some of our family, and I'm saying this, I'm trying to be as kind as I can, some of our family, you can't take them too fast. They got to have meetings on it. And meetings on the meetings, and the meetings on the meetings on the and they looking at you side-eyed because you come at it, you Reverend Doctor with, at the big Black church in town. I'm not calling no names at nobody, but they looking at you sideways, and anyway, or you're the renegade. Let me talk about me. You're the renegade that ain't never played, to the crowd in that way. I've always been on the outside. And so it's interesting now. I get a lot of prop because I've stayed on the outside, right? I've not tried to be on the inside. And of course now, oh yeah, we know what you do. Well, okay. Yeah. And that don't help me because we all need to be finding a place to get set. And this ain't going to get fixed tomorrow, right? What we tried to do, for example, here in Connecticut, we tried to make sure in the session last time that we at least could hold, in special session last year, to hold the line that we wouldn't lose, health care for folk who were here. So, the several hundred thousands of people here in the state of Connecticut, the state said, listen, y'all gonna be set. All right. That was yesterday. That's old news today. We can't go. They done changed the game all the way around again, right? And so some of the folk, I just got word from one of our folk who just received some notification that healthcare is getting ready. It's going to be out of order in a minute. They're not going to be able to pay. So there are things today, and I heard you, Brother Anthony, the grief and Sister Kingwood. I know what you're talking about. We're having to do a number of things at the same time. So you gotta, when they come, you gotta hear the story, right? You gotta know and understand the story, as well as you may not be able to give all the fix. Yet you got to deliver something, right? And make a call somewhere. And so there's all of the stuff that's happening. And what I'm appreciative of is that some of us have our hands in some spaces. So I may not be able to, it used to be a time I was directly involved in social service work. I'm not at that close any longer. And of course, all the players have changed. But I do know the direction to go. So I can say, let me call somebody and have them point us to the next person. It feels like to me that ministry is going to be multifaceted in this day and reality. Who knew that Jesus was going to have to feed the folk while he was also preaching to them? But that's the story of the feeding of the 5,000, right? And I like the version of it that he took the initial loaves and fishes from the young lad, but what ended up happening, the miracle was that wasn't the only loaves and fishes in the crowd. The miracle of it, right? The multiplication of what was there. Or I'll say it this way. Danny Bell Hall said, just like the little lad who gave all he had, how the multitude was fed with the fish and the loaves of bread. What you have may not seem much, but when it's yielded to the touch of the master's loving hand, then you understand how your life could never be the same. That it was only shared in community that the miracle happened. I'm gonna stop because I'm about to.
No, because I think that's what I think we got to reclaim and capture for our generation. The people who did not have as much resources, material resources, who also had more needs than resources, knew it. I guess it was a psychological, spiritual sense of faith to say, I don't have much, but if we're in this community together, we're going to share what we have. Where now we may have a little more resources, but agencies now covet what resources they have, and we hardly share, because so much livelihood is dependent upon individual organizations understanding their resources, that it can make it more difficult. And that's church resources, non-religious nonprofits. But I think, one of our elders, Dr. Itahari Ture, just talks about the imagination of your mama, my mother, the imagination of the people who lived in those times. Because it wasn't just a head intellectual, well, I have to do this. It was a heart, I know I don't have what I need. I know I don't have the money. I know I don't have the resources, but I've got the faith. And it seems like we do have resources, but we don't have the faith. Because we're scared, like the disciples, because we know what we do have still is not going to meet. If Mount Airy gave up all of its offerings, it still wouldn't make the dent in the food insecurity in Bridgeport.
It wouldn't make a dent, but it makes a difference, and I think it's a difference that matters. And I'm also thinking about this question about grief, because I think that grief is enormous, and I think even the people who support what the current administration is doing are living with a kind of grief that they don't even begin to recognize. And I think it is really important that we as pastors and we as leaders of congregations and that our faith movements speak to the grief, because I think people who are feeling it but don't have it affirmed are truly lost. And when it's affirmed and they hear that message that, oh, I'm not alone in this pain, then we have an opportunity, and I don't want to be crass about it, but we actually have an opportunity there to inspire people, to lead people, to organize people. And I suspect, I'm thinking about in the congregation that I serve, there's a lot of people with significant resources who will be moved to share more in this way we're talking about. and it's a way we haven't organized them to share. And I think that's one of the reasons that they don't share more, is because we haven't organized them to share more. And I really want to look into that, but I don't expect people just to open their wallets or, go buy diapers or whatever. I think there's a ministry to them that involves naming the grief, naming their fear, and saying, but there's a way to counteract this. And right now, in these early days of this Project 2025, when there are so many people suffering from it, we just have to do what we can to support people in our communities, and then build from there. That's not the answer, because Bennett, you're right. It's not going to make the dent that we need it to make. But again, it makes a difference.
Well, I think a part of what the trick of the enemy, however we define it, is to divide us, is to scatter us, is to make us believe, to deceive us and distract us, to believe that our efforts won't make that difference. Mm-hmm. And that's where I also saw in the comments, I saw my wife, Donna, mention discovering the interconnectedness. And part of maybe finding your tribe, it's how do we organize? And it's basically the organizing. And not to solve everything and not to include everybody, but what strategic discernment can we make in our different communities about who our people are, so that we can make a difference in whatever way that is. I often share the tension. You all probably don't see it as much because I think you all do it in Hartford. The social service faith-based community and the social justice faith and non-faith community, where the people advocating for the changes of policy and laws don't always engage with the people who are doing the actual services, as though the policy is what's going to really make it change. But then it's like people on the ground may have a storefront, but that storefront is making a difference to those 50, 75 people who can't wait until Hartford sort of shifts. So it's this tension of how do we realize that we're not the enemy with each other, and how not to make whatever contribution to make it out to be insignificant or to be worthless. And I think in this moment, whatever you have that is moving, that is helping social service, social justice, we've got to learn to, on some level, have a level of appreciation for it. Because a part of the grief is in churches that may have been able to make, faith institutions, nonprofits, who may have been able to make particular visible differences with their contributions. In this state, it just seems like you can't make that same kind of difference.
Yeah, and this raises a whole nother set of circumstances, when in fact we have many who may have the fiscal means to make a difference, but don't have the human means any longer. So there are some institutions, and I'll say this broadly, who in fact have some coin, and they could devote some coin towards something or other, but they don't have the people no more. So their identity, here's the grief. They are grieving the loss of who they used to be, right? And then they have to depend on people who different than them. And that here we are. There is again multiple levels of struggle, and yet here's what I do believe: that the times are calling for us to lay aside every weight. Let me say it the way I've been saying it recently. There's some petty that we just gonna have to put that to the side. All right. I don't care about what pastor bought what dress for their wife. I know I'm hitting on something. I'm not. But I don't. There's some petty that's There's just we can't. That can't be what's driving ministry today. It's too. There are too many. There are too many people who are without everything, right? In society, and let's just talk about the United States of America. Our poorest of the poor. If you put them up against the poorest of the poor in other places of the world, they are rich. So we're gonna have to get ourselves together here, and in fact, look to serve. And I love what you said, Reverend Josh, to make the difference. And let me just say, I pastor a small congregation. We make a difference. We make a difference. So and the 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 22, 200 that we may touch in over the arc of a period of time are those that we can reach. I was listening to a brother of ours who's in ministry who said, I can't worry about what you talking about, because there are folk who because we do what we do, they're laying down their addictions. They're coming in, putting the vape pipe on the altar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are too many concerns that while we are focusing on some of the, what I'm going to call the petty of our lives, of our circumstances, this is Howard Thurman. He called it the daily rounds. While we are focusing on the daily rounds, we're missing the opportunity in reflection and in the times we can steal away just for a moment, that we can then get clarity, where the voice of God gets real clear. Go this way, do this, be involved in that. And quite frankly, brothers, that's what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for something, I'm looking for how to move now, God. Because quite frankly, I don't know how to. Pamela and I, we talk about, we can't call this at all. You know, it's certain movements you can see ahead, and you say, okay, this is how this gonna flow. You can't call this right here. You can't, just when you think you got it, you can't figure it out.
The one thing that seems to be screaming at me is the hyper localness of the work right now. I mean, for years we've talked about statewide initiatives, right? But the need that has been created by this administration is so local. And I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jesus in many ways was a local pastor, right? He really was. He wasn't responding to needs across the nation. He was responding to needs right in front of them, in front of him, for healing, for food security, for whatever it was. I think that's an important model.
Which goes back to the holistic interconnectedness of the assignment of what's ahead. It must be integration. And it doesn't mean integration, you know, as Malcolm X would say, you know, you think globally, but act locally, as you mentioned. I think there is this sense that, yes, we can shift and make a difference in our sphere of influence. And for most of us, that's on the local level. There are people that also have influence on a more regional or national level, but that movement is snail's pace. And particularly now,
right?
I'm always remembering the wisdom I learned at 28, 30. No, I didn't learn it then, but I was told about it then by Deacon George Bryant, who shared, you know, I come from New York. I was going at a particular pace. I was here. He said, remember, Rev, ministry is a marathon and not a sprint.
Right.
And I think now, 30 years later, 28, 30 years later, I understand. The race is not given to the swift, the victory to the strong. Going back to what you said, during the time of depression and coming out and mutual aid, they didn't see it either, Doc. They didn't see tangible, but they had vision. They had imagination of what could be. And that faith that sort of helped them move when they could not call it. And I think that's what I'm sensing when I'm praying. Those are the people that I think if I'm saying who my people, who can help me remember. You got more you're working with than you realize. The issue is, do you have imagination of what you can do with it?
Mm-hmm. And I'm with you on that, bro, because it is when we get in a room, or when we get in close proximity to one another, that we're reminded, oh yeah, you know how to do that. Oh yeah, don't you know such and what? Oh yeah, your people got access to that thing over there. It's only when we come together that we then can make some decisions about the next steps, because we're not going to be able to. It is too shifty, and it is too amorphous, and the needs of the folk are changing daily, right? I sometimes hearken back to how hard ministry must have been for Moses. As Moses was sojourning in the wilderness with this rebellious and stiff-necked people coming out of but I can imagine it a little bit because I pastored a church for a minute. Everybody know what to do. They sure do, and they tell you. But then when you say you do it, I don't know. No, this is me. But Pastor, Bishop, you know, and they don't have a clue, or they get it. You give them the assignment, they got it, and they make more of a mess of it that you end up having to heal and fix and course correct. You'd have done better just to do it. I almost said it. However, you learn over time. You know, as a young man, I got mad with that. You know, I fought with that. Now I'm a bit more seasoned. Go on. You can go ahead. I don't know what to do. I start off with, I may have a direction. It may be that way, but I'm not clear about a plan. And I love what you said, Reverend Josh. We're having a meeting on Tuesday. If you want to get involved, because we need to start some conversation about, I don't know what to do, but maybe we, 2 or 3 of us get in the room, 5 or 10 of us get in the room. Maybe we can come out with at least a beginning, a preliminary way and plan, right?
Right.
Yeah. This is, I think we are at a point in the sojourn of who we are, that Uncle Mordecai was right. Girl, you in the king's house for such a time as this, right? That we're here, and I don't know why we're here. To lead, to give direction, to give inspiration, to encourage, just to accompany. That's right, Reverend Nancy. Just to show up, right? Just to be in space and place. And I know what has happened for me, and I think the two of you may have experienced the same thing. People know who we are to the degree they say, hey, they look to us to inspire, to set at least a course in a particular direction. And I think this question of what are you looking for is what I believe I'm at least led to ask people directly, because I believe, here's my faith. My faith says you'll have what you want. Right. Yeah. Say it. You'll get what you seek for. I hear Jesus now saying, Asking it shall be given, seeking ye shall find, knock, and the door will be open to you. That's for me simple faith, and the next steps forward are going to be, here's Jesus. I love what we started with this. Jesus, the disciples were looking for a Messiah, and Jesus was looking for some folk. He was looking for some disciples. And I think we're engaged in that basic understanding of what may be our time now, to really encourage people. We're at time. Any last comments? Any last reflections, brothers?
I would just say I think the question is really important. What are you looking for? Thurman says in that piece on centering down, what are we doing with our lives? And I'm also thinking about Elijah in the cave on Mount Horeb, hearing the still small voice. What are you doing here? These are such important questions all the time, but just searingly important right now. And so I appreciate the opportunity to wrestle with this.
And I agree that a part of this wrestle is, I guess it's complex, but the clarity is setting your intention, discovering and setting your intention and pursuing that. Thank you, brothers, for this.
Yes, this is good stuff. Thurman says lastly in that text, he says, there is a moment at which when you center down and you get rid of the noise and the traffic and the endless strivings, and then the deep hunger and thirst begins to set in, to rest full, and then you get the answers to the questions.
They come.
Then it does come. Then you get the clarity that you're seeking. You're in pursuit of a thing. And then it's at that point, then the spirit refreshes.
Did I hear you say you settle down? You get the answer in the quietness?
You get the answer in the stillness.
A deeper note. A deeper note.
Deeper note. That's what he says.
Yeah.
A deeper note. I love that. Right. And then the clarity comes and you can move. And then as you move, the spirit is refreshed. And you move back into the traffic of the daily rounds. Thurman boy, that boy can show enough talk on it. And then he says, with the peace of the eternal in your step.
Your step, yes.
Woo! How good it is to center down. If you've never read that piece, I want to encourage folks to find that on the internet. It's out there. Howard Thurman. He has certainly been a teacher of mine most of my ministry, and I take great solace in having him in my ear many times. Listen, I appreciate you both. You are loved to me. Your families, your beloveds, and your children are my niece and nephews, and as my children and grand are yours, and we're in this work together. Yep. I can't imagine doing what it is that we do without the two of you and the communities, the faithful communities that you serve. They are my communities as well. Thank you for lending your ear, your voice, your thinking, your spirits to this bit of time. We're helping to set a direction for our folk. I believe not only here in Connecticut, but across the region and in fact across the country and the world. And so may God bless us in our endeavors to lead, guide, support, and correct as God gives us in these times. Blessings to you all. We'll be back at it same time, same bat channel, same bat time. We're going to be doing what it is that we do. Thank you all for listening and gracing us and supporting us. Now, y'all got to do me a favor. Y'all got to click, like, subscribe, and all the stuff I'm supposed to say all that on the, on these internets and interwebs. But I appreciate you very much, and share and what it is that we're actually seeking to do is to forward justice in the world, and to do that from a place of love. And so you all are inspirational leaders and inspire me to do just that. God bless everybody. We'll see you.
All right. Be well.
Peace. Peace. Y'all.
Thank you.
Peace.